ritual known as Bible study.
Why do we have an initiation?
University. But the ultra-secretive society that fascinated Ron Rosenbaum was no fraternity. Skull and Bones counts among its members 3 former presidents, members of the CIA, and some of the richest men in the country. In fact, one of Ron's classmates, a certain George W. Bush, had just been invited to join.
Every April 15, the best and brightest of the junior class were initiated so that they would become full Skull and Bones members. They would be initiated into a kind of lifelong bond, a network of connections and powers that had a great influence.
There were rumors about what exactly went on inside the walls of the crypt, but members were sworn to secrecy. Years after he'd graduated, Ron returned to Yale as an investigative journalist, and with the help of a group of curious students, he set out one spring evening to secretly record a Skull and Bones initiation ceremony. What he found was even stranger than anything he had imagined.
They had people dressed up in devil's costumes. They had a tableau in which a woman's throat was cut, and the initiates all had to bow down and kiss a skull. Those who considered themselves morally serious and wanted to guide the destiny of America in the world. I think many of them still took seriously the bonding that did make them feel that they were engaged in something more important than merely fraternity shenanigans.
Bizarre. But this initiation ceremony continues in one form or another as young men, and now women too, transition to an adulthood in which they will take the reins of power in America. So what do initiation ceremonies mean for the individual? Is it about finding our place in society? Do we need these markers to tell the adolescent us that we are marching, whether we like it or not, into adulthood?
They really solidify social and cultural bonds. It's about, this is my group, these are the people that I belong to.
Anthropologist Professor Tamsin Bradley from Portsmouth University in the UK has spent years exploring different kinds of initiations around the world.
Things like a baby shower, where women might get together and those that have had children will share their birthing story. These are really important moments, and they are certainly still going on.
After considering my own rites of passage, my first period, my first crush, Colin Firth, Mr. Darcy, I've got this faint memory of being told about an initiation I had as a baby. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, so I'll probably hold it about there. So,
yep, okay, that's about right, I think.
So I decided to go home to ask my dad what he remembers about my induction into Sikhism.
I suppose you could call it initiation into the Sikh culture, if you like, or religion. What happened is that when you're about 6 months old, and it was summer, Dadi, which is your grandmother, decided that she would have a big blessing as a consequence of your birth, I guess. So she arranged continuous prayers for 3 days, day and night.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
3 days.
3 days.
So I was obviously 6 months. I couldn't have been there for like 3 days, 3 nights. Mum would have killed you if you didn't get me up for these.
I think you came on the last day. And then I think you had to go home early because it was your bedtime.
I might not have really been present at my initiation, but it did somehow provide me with a link to my cultural heritage. So I understand initiations help us feel part of something bigger than ourselves, but what about when they involve practices that are violent or traumatic?
If we look at an initiation ceremony such as female circumcision or female genital mutilation, it's hard to see how on earth that could be empowering.
Across the world, people are working to have FGM banned. After all, what purpose can such a physically damaging practice serve? Professor Bradley says there's evidence to suggest that these rituals developed in a way to help prepare a woman for what she will go on to experience in her life.
In almost a transition through life as a woman is marked by instances of pain. So it begins with the pain of FGM, the pain your first wedding night when your husband opens you up, and then the pain of childbirth. But actually being able to withstand that pain is seen as an integral part of what it is to be a woman within that society.
And that's why it's such a challenge to persuade women to use alternatives to cutting.
That's very difficult to just simply replace. That's the challenge with some of these introduction of new initiation ceremonies, is that they're just not able to really get to the heart of what the violence within the ritual is actually communicating.
Of course, circumcision in initiation ceremonies is more common practice for men.
When I was 7, my uncles went to do traditional circumcision, and one of them died. 2 of them came back, but they were sick.
Becky grew up in Eastern Cape in South Africa, where young men often go through a 3-week-long initiation ceremony, which includes circumcision. The practice was banned in the early 1800s by King Faku, who thought it weakened his young warriors. But in the 1980s, it saw a revival amongst young men who were looking for a recognition of their transition into adulthood.
If you didn't do it, people did not take you seriously. It was important to me because I thought when you come back from the mountain, I thought you become a real man.
The original Xhosa ceremony was about elders imparting lessons on social responsibility and manly conduct. But by the time the practice re-emerged almost 200 years later, endurance and circumcision had become the focus. Becky was circumcised right at the beginning of his 3-week initiation retreat with a spear.
My penis was numb. I couldn't feel the pain when I touched it. And on the 4th day, I realized that something was wrong with my penis.
He was eventually taken to hospital, where a doctor examined him.
He told me that my penis was going to be cut because it has an infection.
Becky had to have part of his penis amputated.
I was very, very traumatized. I was crying. I was blaming myself. I hated myself very much. I was worried that I couldn't get children. I was worried that no one was going to love me.
But then he was approached by Ulwaluko, an organisation that supports young amputees like Becky, many of whom have lost their entire penises. Patrick Dakwa, their spokesman, is one of the lucky ones. After his initiation, a friend got him to hospital in time to prevent any serious damage to his penis. In 2016 alone, around 40 young men died after their circumcisions became infected.
Most of these boys, their penis, because of gangrene. Gangrene is caused by too tight of bandaging. They lost their penis because of septicemia.
The trouble is, there are no longer any experienced elders involved in the ceremony. Today, initiations are carried out by the young, for the young, and no one has any idea what they're doing. Despite the harm caused, Patrick still sees the value in the initiations themselves, helping to bring unruly young men into line.
It was meant for when someone is causing havoc in the community. Once he undergoes the circumcision, he became a responsible and a real man. So that was what it was meant for. So I think those are the things that I can recommend rather than to say we should suspend and stop doing it.
Becky's now found renewed purpose in his life by helping to bring about public awareness of the issue. He's prepared to talk openly about how he lost part of his penis, but he won't tell me anything else about what goes on in the initiation ceremony.
No one talk about it. Even now, I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Why is there so much secrecy around it?
10 minutes.
I cannot
10
tell you
minutes is
exactly,
long
but
enough.
it's not allowed to speak about it.